It's time for the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show.
Happy New Year, Charleston. Welcome back to the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show right here on the Big Talker, 1250 WTMA. I'm Brian Beatty, 20 years selling real estate here in Charleston, about 1,500 properties sold in that time, about $1 billion worth of real estate represented, and about my 15th year on this program, helping you guys better understand what's happening in the world of real estate. This is a unique show. This is a show that educates and informs people, not just on the market and how that affects us here in our little, slice of heaven on earth, which is Charleston, South Carolina, but I also educate people on the process of buying, selling, investing in real estate so that you are an informed consumer. And today we've got some very interesting ground to cover. Last show we did our projection for what's going to happen this year in real estate, and we're already off to a pretty interesting start with Trump and some of the things that he is proposing for housing policy, whether it's banning investors from buying homes or manipulating the interest rate by purchasing mortgage-backed securities. We're going to talk about all of that this morning as the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show kind of gets into full swing here. But just a few quick housekeeping items. If this is your first time listening to this show, again, I've been selling real estate here locally for 2 decades. Been in the top 1% of agents here every year since 2009. And I share my experiences on this show to help educate and inform my listenership. So if at any point in time you're thinking of buying a home, selling a home, investing in real estate, or you need us to help you with property management, we have a property management company as well. We'd love the opportunity to earn your business. Of course, we give away all this information at no cost. We've got a bunch of great guides that we always send out throughout the show. But if you want to reach out to me and just have a conversation about real estate, and it might not be because you're looking to actually transact. Maybe you just have a general knowledge question. Maybe you need help with, finding a good contractor, or, hey, Brian, what would you do in this type of scenario? Always happy to help. My number, if you want to call or text, 843-800-0065. That's 843-800-0065. You can visit our website online, listingsincharleston.com. That's listingsincharleston.com. And of course, you can check us out on YouTube. We put all our shows, we put video to them, we put them on YouTube so you can watch them. And then we take the same audio and we put it into a podcast so you can listen to it on iTunes or Spotify, Google Play, whatever you guys want to do. But let's kind of get right into it, right? So President Trump, he's doing a good job of keeping us on our toes. I'll tell you that much. He announced that he is moving to ban large institutional investors from buying more single-family homes in the U.S. That includes the big Wall Street landlords and private equity funds you keep hearing about in the news, right? So what does this actually mean for us here in the Low Country? If you own a home, if you're trying to buy, or if you're an investor who likes those, quick cash offers, right? So let's kind of just first define the problem, right? What's actually happening today, right? So if you look over the past decade, big Wall Street-backed firms, private equity funds, real estate investment trusts, referred to as REITs, they started buying up single-family homes left and right? Often in bulk, often with cash, and often turning them into rental properties, right? And this took off right after the crash of 2008 when we started seeing a lot of distress inventory hit the market. There was a point in time where almost 1 in 3 properties available in the Charleston market was in some form of distress, a bank-owned property, short sale, what have you. I know because I did hundreds of them. I'm glad we don't have to do that anymore. It wasn't a fun time really for anybody. I personally negotiated over 100 short sales for my clients, and I'm very proud to say that with the exception of maybe 1 or 2, everybody got to walk away and they just didn't know anything. It's just, hey, here are the keys. My bad. Didn't have to pay a cash contribution, didn't have some sort of promissory note attached to it. It was a crazy time, right? And so according to data by the U.S. Government Accountability Office, as of a few years ago, the 5 largest institutional investors only owned about 2% of all single-family rental homes nationwide, right? So it sounds small, but in certain areas, in certain price points, in certain neighborhoods, especially starter homes, their presence was highly concentrated. And so why are people upset about that, right? Well, when a giant fund with billions of dollars in capital shows up and says, hey, you know what? We'll pay cash, no inspection, no appraisal, close when you want to close as soon as 7 days if you'd like. That's pretty tough for a young family that has just, they're proud to say that, hey, I've got, $10,000 or $20,000 saved up for my down payment because they're going to use like an FHA loan, or maybe they served in our military and they have access to a VA loan, or they're doing some sort of first-time home buyer program loan. It's incredibly challenging to compete with an investor that says, hey, you know what, we'll pay cash, we'll close when you want to close, don't worry about fixing anything up. We'll go at your pace, and here's our offer, right? And there's a lot more to that. We won't get too much into that today, but if you're looking in markets where these buyers are really active, right? I think a lot of people would argue that they push prices higher by outbidding ordinary buyers, right? They reduce the number of homes available for ownership, and then they convert them into rentals instead, right? But on the flip side, institutional investors could say that they provide long-term rental housing, that they provide professional management, that they provide liquidity to sellers that want a fast and certain sale, that are in some form of, distress, maybe not to the point where they've gotten a foreclosure notice, but they're certainly in rough shape financially. And we've seen a lot of that here in the Charleston area. If off-market postcards, we buy houses cash. If we can't sell your home, we'll buy it. Or sellers just getting a quick, easy number from a big, out-of-town landlord, right? Which, when you think about it, could cause you to ask, Brian, is this good for us as homeowners, or is this part of the reason why my kids can't afford to buy a house here, right? And, look around. Everyone wants to give you an immediate cash offer for your house. That's what real estate agents advertising has essentially morphed into, because that's what the consumers want. They want immediate results. So a mechanism has been created to satisfy that curiosity. And it's essentially a series of institutional investors that use an algorithm, right, to generate an offer based on formulas that take into account, the predicted value of the home and the profit they bake into the deal. Because, in real estate, the old adage goes, you make your money when you buy it, not when you sell it. You can control how much you pay for a property. And to an extent, you can control your budget, what you want to do to the house. What you really can't control is what someone else is willing to pay for it after it's all said and done and you've fixed up the property. You can operate with reasonable certainty, but that's why there's always speculation in something like flipping or investing in general. You've got some level of speculation and risk, of course. It's a real estate transaction. But so what is it that Trump is actually proposing? Right. So in a recent statement, social posts, Trump said he is going to immediately take steps to ban large institutional investors from buying more single family homes. And he's going to call on Congress to codify and ban that into law, or put that ban into law. And so you've got Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has since clarified that the goal is to stop future purchases of single family homes by large institutional players. They are not talking about forcing those firms to sell their homes that they already own, which I don't even know how you wouldn't be able to do that. Now you could say that this is not a confiscation plan, right? Look, it's more like, look, you've already got your inventory. You've got all your rentals. You did great. Good for you. But from here on out, we want to reserve the next wave of single family homes for actual families, not Wall Street, right? So let's just back up a second. What is a large investor? What's an institutional investor? I mean, there's not an exact definition. Details are still kind of being finalized, I think. But generally speaking, this refers to private equity funds, hedge funds, large real estate investment trusts, REITs, and then Wall Street-backed companies that own thousands or tens of thousands of homes, right? Large firms, owning 1,000 homes or more. And the reality is they only own about 2% of property. There's about 86 million single-family homes in the United States. And investors, just investors in general, could be your bartender owns a rental. It could be, some large hedge fund that owns 4,000 homes. Who knows? But all investor ownership of single-family homes only accounts for about 20% of them. And the small mom-and-pop investors that own 1 to 5 investment properties, they make up the vast majority of investors in general. They're at about 85 to 87% of the total investor pool, right? with large institutions only owning about 2%, maybe as much as 3%. So if you look and if you try to quantify that, in the second quarter of last year, nationwide, we sold about 1.25 million properties, right? About 1.23 million. Large investors only purchased about 20,000 of them. Now, again, Basen has also said that he wants to preserve smaller family-based rental practices, meaning mom and pop landlords who own a couple of rentals or local investors with a small portfolio, which is very common here in Charleston. What he's aimed at is preventing large institutional investors from purchasing multiple properties because of how deep their pockets are and essentially manipulating markets, right? Because if you think about it, and this is, I've talked about this before on the show, and I don't think a lot of people, after hearing it, it makes sense, but not a lot of people put two and two together. But when you had a bunch of these companies going out, and I know because I worked for them. I mean, they hired my team to go try and help them acquire $30 to $50 million of real estate a month. We could never find it. We could never find that amount of real estate to sell them. And they were paying full price for properties. No appraisal, no inspections, close when you want to close. We just want to buy it because this is the exact type of property we want to turn into a rental. And we know that the market's going to go up, right? So this is 2020, 2021, parts of 2022. Then things kind of phased out as interest rates started to rise, and it just wasn't as much of a practical investment environment to turn a property into a rental property, right? The yield just wasn't there for a lot of it. Or you couldn't find sellers that were then willing to sell at a price low enough for that to make sense. So how does this help the real estate market, right? And on top of that, when we look at the idea of interest rates and the fact that so many people are already priced out of the market, on one hand, this is going to help with supply, but there are so many other things to talk about that kind of go hand in hand here. We're going to take a break and we're going to continue this discussion because we're not done talking about the idea of banning large institutional investors, but there's another thing going on behind the scenes that you really need to know about. So stick around for more of the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show right here on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA and WTMA.com. And remember, if you want to reach out to me, if you have real estate questions, you're thinking of buying or selling or investing in real estate, or you have a property you would like for us to manage for you, then reach out to me personally. It goes straight to my phone. I answer it. So it's 843-800-0065, 843-800-0065, or check out our website, listingsincharleston.com. Talking about Trump's recent proposal to ban large institutional investors from being able to purchase single-family homes. And I know that some of you that are listening right now probably live on a street where one of these larger institutional funds owns a rental property. We have a lot of it here in Charleston. Hedge funds and institutional investors, iBuyers. There's all these different little categories of investors. But the point is, a lot of them, when COVID hit and everybody started moving to Charleston, they realized that, right? They looked at the migration patterns. They're smart. They started picking up properties left and right. And the concern that a lot of people have, which I was kind of alluding to before the break, is that they would go and buy 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 homes in one neighborhood, and they would pay, fair market value for those properties, right? And for the homeowner, it seemed like a pretty good deal because they're getting a cash deal at pretty darn close to fair market value. They don't have to worry about the inspection. They don't have to worry about the appraisal. They don't have to worry about people walking in and out of their house. I mean, there are a lot of attractive reasons to sell your property to an investor at that point in time. Of course, you removed the ability for buyers to give you a multiple offer scenario so that you could actually make more money, but never mind any of that. A lot of people like hitting the easy button. Costs you a lot of money, but a lot of people enjoy the convenience and they don't mind paying for it. That's why these investors exist in the first place. And so what would happen is they'd go and buy 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 homes in a neighborhood at a fair price. But then on the 8th one, they would pay a pretty substantial amount more. Now, why would they do that? Well, it's because they already own 6 or 7 others in the neighborhood. And by paying more for the next one, and then maybe someone else follows suit, and now a new bar has been raised in terms of what value looks like in that area, the 5, 6, 7 properties they purchased beforehand just suddenly got a nice little boost in appreciation, right? And so that's part of reason why Trump is looking at this. I mean, if huge funds can't keep bidding on the same 3-bed, 2-bath house that first-time home buyers want, then in theory, those homes become easier for families to buy instead of rent. And to be honest, most of these deals are done off market, which adds to the supply constraint, right? Those sellers never got the home to the active market, right? So more homes on the market means a more balanced market, which means more opportunity for buyers of starter homes. But if these investors are picking off all these opportunities before they even make it to the market, it keeps supply low. And even with affordability being where it is, the reason why our market isn't going crazy right now is because we still don't have enough homes, not just in our area, but in America. We are undersupplied. We have not been building enough homes at enough pace over a prolonged period of time. And we're like several million housing units short from where we should be. So the idea is that if one big source of cash offers is removed, right, then you're going to see maybe fewer bidding wars and slightly less upward pressure on prices if those in those pockets of the market, right? So you're going to have a slight easing of price pressure where institutions are active, which is okay, right? We need, at some point in time, the market has to become more attractive for the entry-level home buyer. And that doesn't really have anything to do with age, by the way, because we last year sold a home to some folks that were in their late 60s, and it was their first time buying a house, right? So it's never too late. But I think there's also just kind of the symbolic reset of the American dream narrative, right? I mean, politically, the message is just going to be like homes should be for families, right? Not just financial products for Wall Street. But of course, there are limits, right? Economists are pretty quick to point out that institutional investors still own a relatively small portion of the overall single-family housing stock nationwide. I mean, again, there's 86 million single-family homes, and large institutional investors only own about 2% of them. And of course, that's because of the chronic underbuilding and low inventory issues that we've been dealing with for years. So this won't magically cut prices in half. It's more likely taking, what I would say is it's more like taking one very visible competitor off the field while we still haven't solved the deeper issue, which is there just aren't enough homes, right? So, I think, again, here's where this gets really interesting for sellers, for us in real estate, right? A lot of people love the idea of an instant cash offer. No showings, no repairs, no strangers walking in and out of your house. You press a button, you get a number, right? Well, a lot of those quick offers, especially at scale, they come from institutional investors. If big institutions can't buy single homes anymore, then what changes? Well, you get fewer easy button offers from national players as a first thing, right? You get less solicitations, right? Fewer postcards in the mail and fewer national websites that are offering to buy your home directly and then turn it into a rental. But I think it also represents some more opportunity for local investors and for agents too. I mean, smaller investors who aren't being pushed out by institutional money with basically unlimited pockets compared to them. They just come up to the table and say, hey, I'll be your cash offer guy now, right? And I think agents too, this is really important because, again, so much of real estate agent marketing revolves around what we feel the consumer wants and needs and responds well to at that point in time, right? We're talking about marketing, right, and advertising. And there's a little difference between the two, but let's not get caught up in the semantics. The point is, if everybody else out there is offering some sort of instant cash offer or instant valuation for your home, then you kind of have to go with the pack a little bit. But then, of course, we on our team are significantly different in that we want the ability to be able to bring you options, right? We're one of the few entities in town where, I run a large team that does a lot of real estate deals, but I still personally help people buy and sell real estate, right? I'm still an active agent. So people listening still get to work with me rather than just getting, sent off to some junior agent on the team. We have a property management company. I have a private money lending company. I also invest in real estate. So when we meet with somebody, They might say, Brian, I just want a cash offer. I don't want the hassle. And we can tap into our local network. I can buy the house. Our private money lending company can assist if another investor wants to look at it. And our property management company can just show different paths. What's it going to look like if you list your house? How much are you going to net? If you sell it to a local investor, what's that going to look like? Or if you want to keep the property, we manage it and you turn it into a long-term investment instead of just a one-time sale, here's what that looks like, right? So I think that generally speaking, this could be a good thing. Where does that leave us here in the Charleston area? I think, number one, none of this is, of course, fully implemented yet. We're at the announcement stage on the details, right? Who counts as quote unquote large and how that's enforced, all that still has to be worked out. But I think directionally, if big Wall Street landlords are pushed to the sidelines, it could make buying a starter home a little easier in certain price points, which we desperately need just foundationally in our market. It's going to reduce some of the aggressive cash offer competitors and companies out there that say like, hey, we'll give you an immediate cash offer. And also real estate agents too. I mean, you think about all the real estate agent marketing out there that's like guaranteed offer within 24 hours. Well, you know where that offer is coming from. It's coming from an institutional investor. They plug in your address and the details of your house into a website and boom, pops out an offer, right? I think it creates more opportunities for local investors and for local buyers. It's going to get more inventory on the market, on the active market, as opposed to being sold off market. So we're going to see more options. Buyers will have more options. And quite frankly, the more options that exist and the longer those options stay on the market, the more the market balances and the more likely it is that a first-time home buyer or a buyer in that entry-level stage of life has the ability to get in. Right now, we're looking at about 24% of all transactions in our country being done by first-time home buyers. A healthy market should be more like 40%, right? So we're a long ways off from that. And so I like the idea of it. But if you're thinking of selling and you're weighing, do I just take a cash offer or do I go on the open market? Or if you're wondering how this might impact value of your home or investment properties over time, give me a call. My team and I have been doing this for 20 years in the Low Country. We've helped over 1,500 separate folks buy or sell or invest in real estate. No pressure, right? Just good information so we can kind of help make a smart decision together in a changing market. So if you'd like to learn more about working with us or you just want to have a chat, feel free to reach out. My number is 843-800-0065. That's 843-800-0065. My website, listingsincharleston.com. That's listingsincharleston.com. And don't forget to check us out on YouTube and in our podcast on iTunes and Spotify and Google Play and all that great stuff. We were talking about President Trump's push to ban Wall Street investors, especially large institutional investors, realistically those that own 1,000 homes or more, from buying even more single-family homes. All right, we talked about the pros and the cons of that. Now I want to unpack his other big housing headline this week, which is a directive to have $200 billion worth of mortgage-backed securities purchased to bring mortgage rates down. And I mean, you got to applaud the guy for doing whatever he can do to get these mortgage rates down. He seems like he's on a warpath to make sure that happens. And so what does that even mean? Is it realistic? And more importantly, will it actually lower your payment if you're buying or refinancing a home in Charleston, right? So that's what we're going to talk about next. Now, again, just a quick bit of housekeeping here, but if you want to reach out to me, if you want to talk about real estate, if you're looking for a very experienced, high-caliber real estate agent to assist you, I will tell you that just because I'm experienced does not mean that I am more expensive. We have multiple options with regard to compensation and how we ultimately work together, a menu of services, if you will. And so we've got everything from the budget-friendly version to the red carpet treatment. So would love for you guys to reach out if you're thinking of transacting this year and give us an opportunity to earn your business. My number, again, 843-800-0065, 843-800-0065. That's my cell. You can call or text it. Or check us out. Our website is listingsincharleston.com. You can view us on YouTube, and our socials are all the Brian Beatty team. So check us out. Look us up. We put a lot of time and energy into that stuff. So we appreciate all the all the likes and subscribes and comments and all the good stuff that comes from that. So, all right, let's go on this fun journey together because Trump is determined to be anything but boring. And so what did he actually say? So on January 8th, Trump announced on social media that he is directing his representatives, quote unquote, to buy $200 billion in mortgage-backed securities with the goal of lowering mortgage rates and making, of course, homeownership more affordable here in the United States. And so he pointed specifically to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, which are the government-controlled mortgage giants, saying that they now have about $200 billion in cash or liquid resources that could support such purchases, right? Now, the Federal Housing Finance Agency, the FHFA, director has already confirmed the administration is serious about pursuing this. The details, the timing, the mechanics, the limits, of course, those are all still unclear. And, in simple terms, the idea is this. Have the government and these mortgage agencies go into the bond market, buy up a bunch of mortgage bonds, and by doing that, push mortgage rates down. So, first of all, what is a mortgage-backed security? Let's explain it fairly simply. When you get a mortgage, right, your local lender often doesn't keep that loan forever, right? They sell it to Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac or into the secondary mortgage market, right? And so then these loans, all these individual loans get bundled into a mortgage-backed security, which is a big pool of mortgages that investors can buy, and then they get paid back as homeowners make their monthly payments, right? So think of it like this, right? Instead of one investor lending to one homeowner, you have a giant basket of thousands of mortgages, and investors can buy pieces of that basket and just earn interest over time. The interest rate that you pay on your loan is very closely tied to the yield that investors demand on those mortgage bonds. So if demand for these bonds goes up, then yields tend to go down, and that can pull mortgage rates down as well. Essentially, what Trump is trying to influence is the demand for mortgage bonds. So why is he suggesting this? Well, obviously, housing affordability is still front and center. And the word affordability I have used more times than I can count over the course of the past few years. And so, even though mortgage rates have come down from their peak and their average 30-year is still looking like in the low sixes nationally, well above, of course, the sub-3 levels that people locked in during 2020 and 2021. But we still have a large portion of people that simply cannot afford to buy a home, or they can't afford to buy the home they want, right? Well, you can't always get what you want, but we've got to have some structural components looked at here. And this is one of the things that he's doing, right? He's trying to address affordability, and he's been very clear with regard to his intent to try and bring down interest rates. But at the same time, it's not like home prices have fallen dramatically, right? They're still elevated. So you combine the price of the house with the interest rate and you come up with the payment, you match that up to how much money you make. And at least us here locally, the median income is only about 70. It's under 75. I don't know the exact percentage, but it's definitely between 70 and 75. But we as an area, right, as a Charleston metro area, we only earn about 75% of the income necessary to purchase the median priced home in our market. And that's assuming you're bringing a 20% down payment to the table. If you have less of a down payment, the affordability looks even worse, right? So this is a very obvious political hot button, but it's also a very real issue, right? The administration is clearly under pressure to do something and to do something visible on housing ahead of, of course, midterm elections. And the $200 billion figure, it's big. It's easy to understand. It allows them to say, look, we're taking bold action to drive mortgage rates and monthly payments down, right? If you're a homeowner and you're sitting on a 3% mortgage, you're pretty well locked in. And I was mentioning to a client of mine earlier, I was meeting with him out at his house in Keogh. It's a beautiful place. And we were just talking about that lock-in effect where essentially you've got a pretty decent percentage of people that, if you really boil it down, they like their interest rate and their housing payment more than they like their house. They really like the payment. They'd like to move. Maybe the house doesn't even work for them anymore. But the idea of leaving an interest rate at 3 or below is just too tough a pill to swallow. And so they'd rather just suck it up and stay. Or they might refinance and remodel, which is something I'd mentioned in my predictions for this year, is that you're going to see a lot more people decide to stay put. You're going to see household formations start to change as folks move in with their kids, or kids move in with their folks, or friends move in with other friends and family. We're already starting to see it. We saw about 12% of the population do that last year, join households. And that number is actually expected to go up this year. So, is this even realistic? Let's just go there, right? Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are under government conservatorship, and they already play a pretty central role in the mortgage market, right? They buy and they guarantee loans to keep credit flowing. And they do have a very large balance sheet and significant capital and liquidity. But a $200 billion purchase program would really represent a major policy shift, and it could just deplete, the capital buffers that they're supposed to protect against future downturns, which could be a problem. So, the jury's still out as to whether this is a good idea and what the constraints look like. Experts have compared this to kind of like a mini quantitative easing, similar to what the Federal Reserve did back during the pandemic when it, bought large quantities of Treasury and mortgage bonds. But you're looking at things like, the FHFA and the Treasury are going to need to sign off on how fast they buy, what types of mortgage-backed securities they buy, how they protect taxpayers and the solvency of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. And depending upon, how aggressive that plan is, Congress might get involved or push back if it's viewed as too risky or just too political. So is it technically possible? I mean, yes, I suppose these agencies already operate in that space, but doing it at this scale, this fast, and for, let's be honest, kind of explicitly political goals is where economists and regulators start raising some eyebrows, right? And obviously anything that we do, it has to be done right, because we've been dealing for the past several years with the aftermath of bringing interest rates down to 3 and below, right? It just shot the market stratospheric with regard to home value because affordability was so attractive. Now we're on the other side of that. So I think at the end of the day, economists are kind of lukewarm on this. Some estimates suggest a program of this size might bring mortgage rates down somewhere between 0.1 and 0.5 of a point. So if at best, we're at 6.25 right now, that brings us down to 5 and 5.75, 6%, something like that. Someone else is saying, this could pull us down toward around 5%, but certainly not down to 4 or 3 or anywhere around there. And remember, we still have low inventory and we still have years of underbuilding, even if rates fall a bit. Lower payments, I mean, let's be honest, they're going to pull more buyers into the market. And where's the problem in our market right now? Is it on the demand side or is it on the supply side? Right? It's really more on the supply side. We still don't have enough homes to create balance and normalcy in the market. And doing something like lowering interest rates is just going to create more opportunity for buyers to get into the market. That being said, there's so many different levels to this, right? Because maybe somebody's at a 3 and maybe they missed the 3%. Maybe they're at 4, right? There are plenty of folks at 4s and 5s. There's actually more people that have an interest rate above 6% than they do at 3 or below, right? So that gap that we talk about, the golden handcuffs, right? Like, I'm going to keep my interest rate and I'm not going to move because I've got the best deal in town on my monthly payments. That gap, right? It's shortening. And so what could happen is that this could actually push prices higher and kind of hurt the people that it intended to help, right? So yeah, I mean, you might save $75, $150 a month on your payment, depending upon the price point, but you might also be competing with more buyers for the same limited number of homes. So, I mean, on a $500,000 house with 10% down, you're looking at, Well, let's not get into the numbers because we just don't have time. And quite honestly, sometimes I lose you guys with my math. I'm just going to switch gears. But let's talk about who wins and who loses in this, right? So the winners, right? Who are the potential winners? Active buyers, right? Slightly lower interest rate, improves their affordability, their qualifications, what they can get. Maybe that's the difference between a 3-bedroom and a 4-bedroom, or it's the difference between an upgraded kitchen or a dated kitchen. It can be a big difference to a lot of people. I think it's also going to help kind of silently start to add some inventory to the market, because if rates come down, let's say into the mid-5s, you're going to have a lot of people that say, like, I can deal with that, right? Yeah, we have a 3% interest rate right now, but you know what? The house doesn't work for us anymore. And we've made a bunch of money, right? We've got a ton of equity in the property. Let's use those gains to pay down the principal balance of the other house we buy to make the monthly payments more affordable, right? So I think it actually will bring some more folks into the market, but I think it's going to create some more competition as well, right? You're also going to see a lot of people that are going to start to refinance, right? You're going to see contractors getting even busier than they are. And if Fannie and Freddie deploy a large chunk of their resources and we later hit a recession, they're going to have less cushion, right? They're raising the risk of a future bailout, and we don't want any more of those, right? But ultimately, yes, this could give you a better interest rate and a slightly better payment, but it doesn't fix the core problem we've been talking about for years on this show, which is that we still just don't have enough homes. We haven't built enough. There aren't enough for sale. It's still on paper a seller's market, given the number of transactions we're doing in relation to how many properties are available for sale at any given point in time, right? We talk about market absorption, talk about months supply of inventory. It's one of the ways we kind of measure the health of a real estate market. And right now, if nothing else hit the market, everything would be sold out in about 3.5 months. We want that number to be more like 6 months or 8 months, right? Those are normal market numbers. But right now, even though we're starting to see a shift in the market, we're still technically a seller's market. It's just that it doesn't feel that way because it feels like a normal market and people are behaving as though it's a normal market. So interesting ideas coming out of the White House as it relates to the housing market. We're going to take a quick break and wrap things up. So stick around for the last few minutes of the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show. And I want to do something really quickly that I just need to do more of. I want to encourage you guys to help with regard to some content for the show. I'd love to hear from you and hear your questions. What do you guys want to hear me talk about on this program? What are some questions that you have or things that you'd like more information on? Maybe it's on a specific process. Maybe it's on land. I mean, pick anything out of the sky and text it or email it to me. I'm happy to incorporate this information into the show. This is for you guys. It's to help educate and inform you and, in return, maybe earn some business along the way. So if you want to reach out to me and suggest a topic, you want to talk about your plans, you're looking for a quality real estate agent, would love to help in any way. 843-800-0065 is my number. Call or text 843-800-0065. Our website is listingsincharleston.com, and my email address is brian@brianbeattyteam.com. Kind of threw a lot at you guys this first week back after a great time off. Really enjoyed the break with some family and some friends, and so hope you guys did too. Thanks for coming back and for listening to the show. We've got plenty of years ahead and a lot to talk about on this program as it relates to our local housing market, and that's something that I have been obsessed with for the past 20 years as I've been selling real estate. Started right out of college, and I'm fortunate to have kind of reached a level in our business where we can confidently say that we can really help you with your real estate goals. Whether it's a house or a piece of land, we can do pretty much whatever you want to do with it. We can buy it, build it, develop it, sell it, invest in it, manage it, lend against it, whatever you guys need. So would love the opportunity to chat with some more of you if you have some questions about the market, or you're thinking about buying or selling or investing in real estate, or you need a property for us to manage. And the last thing I'll say is that we're also growing, and even though this real estate market is kind of a little bit flat right now, just kind of stagnant, we've got some great opportunities. So if you're thinking of selling real estate, maybe you're an investor or a realtor that listens to this program that would like to chat with me about maybe joining the team, we'd love the opportunity to chat with you as well. The number again, 843-800-0065 or Listings in Charleston. So we've talked about a lot today. What should we what should we do with this information, right? I kind of mentioned during my projections episode last few weeks ago that I'm expecting a somewhat drama-less real estate market this year. In other words, we had a lot going on last year. I mean, just pick something out of a hat of multiple crazy things. It created a lot of stress and uncertainty in the market. And obviously, consumer confidence is not looking as good as it has in years past with regard to this real estate market. As we've talked about, issues with affordability, issues with inventory, issues with lack of demand to sell a home and buy another because of the interest rate they currently have versus the interest rate they would get if they did decide to transact. There's a lot going on, right? But at the end of the day, it's still just a fairly normal, fairly balanced real estate market. We're still doing well as an area. We are not South Florida, right? We are not getting crushed. We're not Nashville, where a bunch of people are starting to move out and things are staying on the market for months and months and months and months. But, it's something we're keeping an eye on. And so focus on what you can control, right? Focus on your budget, your time horizon, your job stability, your cash reserves, whether owning or renting makes sense for you, not just based on the headlines and what you hear and read and watch. And numbers run both ways, right? Have somebody look at what it looks like buying at today's rate versus if you waited, and maybe here's what it looked like if you bought at a 5.5% rate. And then ask the question of whether we can actually get you that 5.5% rate today, because we're having a lot of success with that with the buyers that we represent, right? We manipulate the interest rate on the mortgage and we have the seller pay for it, which is perfectly legal. And it's something that happens more often than not. In fact, over half of the transactions that occur in our real estate market locally, the seller either pays, they pay concessions is what it's referred to as. But sometimes that means that they pay for the buyer's closing costs, right? Like prepayments for taxes and insurance and loan origination fees and attorney's fees and so on and so forth. But that could also mean an interest rate buy down. So there are ways of manipulating payments. It's not rocket science. It happens more often than you think. So if the interest rate is what's keeping you from buying right now, I'd say have a conversation with us to see if we have some creative solutions that maybe you don't know of or haven't thought through. We'd love to provide with the information. Of course, if you're thinking of selling, we'll provide you with a free home analysis. Anything we can do to help you guys at this point. We've got the bandwidth, and we're genuinely interested in helping. So again, the number 843-800-0065, 843-800-0065, or listingsincharleston.com. You guys enjoy your weekend. Thanks for listening.
Join us for another edition of the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show next Saturday morning at 9 and Sunday morning at 10. Find him online at listingsincharleston.com. That's listingsincharleston.com. Or call him at 843-800-0065. That's 843-800-0065.